Welcome everyone to the Healing Corner, where we share stories of healing and being a healer. I am your host, Sarah Woodard from Stonebridge Transformation and SBT Animals. Joining me today is Cynthia Zhai. Cynthia is a voice coach, speaker, and author. She has helped business professionals and professional speakers from 46 countries across 5 continents speak with impact and conviction. She engages and inspires people to embrace change and take action. Cynthia has been a professional speaker and coach for the past 17 years, and her engagement spans 4 continents in countries such as the US, Finland, the Netherlands, Argentina, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Macau, mainland China, India, Brunei, Vietnam, and the Philippines. You can find Cynthia at powerfulexecutivevoice.com, and the link will be in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Hi, I'm glad to be on the show.
So really quick, did I say your last name correctly? Because I normally ask and I forgot to.
Yes, it's
Awesome.
correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So here's my, when I read your bio and I was researching you and stuff, my first question when I initially just read your bio was, okay, so voice. Does she mean like finding your voice? Like, helping people to figure out what they want to say and how to say it? Or does she mean like the actual tonality and quality and strength of the voice? Or is it both? So.
Okay. So it started out as the physical side of the voice, and it is to strengthen the voice. Or some of my clients, their pitch was high, is to develop a deeper voice. So it's the literal physical voice that I was helping my clients working on.
Okay.
And as I go along, that they started to ask more about, how do I articulate my ideas, my thoughts?
Sure.
So that's an additional aspect that I have added to.
And do you find that they're actually connected in a way? Like I know that this is very judgy of me, but I know that when I'm on the phone with somebody, if they have like one of those like, oh, hi, voices, I tend to feel like I don't want to take them very seriously. So I totally get why you want to help people bring it down to that more modulated level. Because for whatever reason, that our people's brains, we seem to perceive that deeper level as more serious and more professional or whatever. Yes. But do you find that when they're in that lower tone that they actually also feel more confident in what they're saying and how they're saying it? Like, is it connected?
So it is connected because when we are developing the voice, the deeper voice is actually not the goal. The goal is to develop a fuller voice. A fuller voice is a voice that's projected with the full body. So when you have the full body, the pitch, for most people, the pitch will go deeper. And the full voice is very much related to how you feel. So when you have a fuller voice, you will feel more confident and you will feel more authentic.
That makes so much sense to me. So I want to tell you and everyone else a story about my life, which people find hard to believe now. But I am an INFJ, and so INFJs, we're introverts, but you don't always know that when you first meet us because we're really good at faking. But as a child, I was the silent kid. I would not even talk to my parents if we were in public, and sometimes not even at home. I was afraid of my voice in a way, I guess, looking back on it, but I didn't know that at the time. What I knew was by 6th grade, I realized, wow, not speaking is getting me nowhere. And that was, looking back again, that was pretty deep wisdom for a kid in 6th grade, but for me, it was just normal.
That's right.
And I was like, wow, I just know that if I don't speak up, I'm not getting anywhere. And so I forced myself to start stepping out of that silent child mode and speak up. And one of the scariest things I did was on the school bus. I rode the bus to school every single day, and I was the last stop, which meant my ride to school was very short, but my ride home was very long. And so on the ride home, kids used to sing on the bus and whatever, and I would just sit there with my hands folded very silently, trying to be not seen and not heard. When I decided I needed to step out of that, I stood up on the bus and I started the sing-along, which was incredibly scary because not only is my voice being heard, but my singing voice is being heard. And my singing voice is really nothing I'm super proud of. But I did it. And and you're right, like at first, when it first came out, it was very like, hi, I'm Sarah. And as I got more confident speaking, it settled into where I speak now. And so I feel you on that connection of, and I think it could probably go the other way too, like the fake it till you make it, right? You can walk more confident until you feel it. You can talk more confident until you feel it. So that's
that's right.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you help people with that?
Okay, so for voice, most people thought that it's only to change the tone, but to work on the voice is to work on the body. So that's why that because body and mind are one. So that's why when you work on the body, you develop a fuller voice. Your own vibrational frequency will be changed. So when the vibrational frequency is changed, it will affect how you feel. So we work on the body because of the stress that we're all experiencing, and the body becomes very tense. So we work on the body. One is to relax the body. For some of my clients, just to relax the body, it can take a long time.
Sure.
And so once the body is relaxed, then we open up this channel, which is the voice projection channel.
Okay.
And this channel is open and relaxed. Then you have not only more vibration coming from the throat, the voice box, but also more vibration coming from the body. So that's how we go through the process to work on the body. And as a result, the voice will be changed.
That's really fascinating. So my mom was just recently diagnosed with something called, I think it's voice box dysfunction or something like that. For a long time, they thought she had asthma or all these other lung issues and whatnot, but none of the asthma meds were helping. None of, like the normal stuff that helps people with breathing problems breathe, none of that was working. And one day she finally had an attack of whatever this was while she was at her doctor. And that was such a blessing because the doctor went, your voice is way different, Nancy. And that's how they put the pieces together. They sat down and they researched it and put the pieces together. Because what happens is I'm sure I heard this when I was in the room. My mom will get this tickle, right? And she'll drink water and the tickle won't go away. And when that happens, her voice gets really high and squeaky and like she's having trouble talking. And finally, the doc, like I said, I'm sure I heard that in the womb before I ever came out, but it's been for at least as long as I've been alive that she's done that, probably her entire life. And when her doctor finally made this connection, they realized it's her voice box. And so they want to send her to some sort of a speech therapist to work on how to change that. And so, and when my mom told me this, I'm going, I don't get it. Like you just made me get it. Now I understand. It's about opening that, changing her body, the way she holds herself and all that. And then it makes so much sense as to why it only happens sometimes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. That's also good news.
It is good news. It's solvable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good news too, because for a long time, like my mom has always struggled with her weight and she wanted to, she wants to lose the weight and she wants to go for a walk and, try to keep herself healthier and stuff. But because she would get this issue that she thought was her lungs, she was afraid to go do it. So it's really good for her to now be able to say, okay, this isn't my lungs. And so she'll push herself and she'll go and then she'll come back and she'll, so it's a very good thing. But you're helping more people from the business standpoint, it sounds like.
Yes. So they work on their voices for my clients, my students, is for their professional growth. So some of them, they want to move to the next level in their career. Okay. Some, they want to generate more business for their own business. So they came to me because of the professional growth. Okay.
So like what types of things does working on their voice help them to change? I mean, I would imagine confidence for sure, but what else? How else does it help them to reach those professional goals?
So one is confidence. The other one is also that people around them started to perceive them differently. So they see them as more, not only more confident, but also more competent. And some of my clients, because of the change in their voices and the result of the confidence change, they were able to be promoted. And
Mm.
some of them, they were able to have the boss set up a specific position for them to acknowledge
Wow.
their expertise. And
That's really cool.
so, yeah, there was one client, she jumped 2 levels up in her company, the company ladder.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
And it feel like
and
it really does matter. It's like I was saying before when like you call like tech support or whatever, right? And you
yes,
get somebody on the phone who's like, "Hi, my name is Jewel, la la la," and I sit there going, "Oh my God, this
yeah,
person can't help me." Maybe they totally can, but their voice just has
yeah,
that effect, and I have to like remind myself, like, this person may be very competent at their job, gives them a chance,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to help someone find the way to project more confidence with their voice, because it really makes a difference in how people perceive you and how they're willing to work with you.
Yes, yeah, it is, because when you're hearing that kind of voice, hi, that kind of voice, they send out a type of vibration. That's why
Yeah,
that
right.
unconsciously you were affected.
Yes,
So
exactly.
unconsciously, we have this impression that they may not be very competent, and
Which
so
may be
when they are
completely
working on
false.
their, yeah, yeah. So when they work on their voices, their vibrational frequency is changed. So they
Mm.
send out vibration that makes people perceive them differently
Yeah,
and perceive them as more competent and confident.
sure. Sure. Now, do you find
Yeah,
it's primarily men or women or both that want help with their
but
voice? Both?
both is
Yeah.
there's a slight difference in their voice challenges.
Okay, so to explain those to
Yes.
me.
Yeah. So for example, for women, they came to me because their voice is too soft
Mm,
or their pitch is high.
mm.
For men, one problem I think is probably because men, they're not very good at emotion, so their
Yeah.
voice is monotonous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Is that
And
the
some of them,
Go
yes.
ahead. No, go. That's fine. Go.
So some of them, they also want to develop more gravitas in their voices.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
so
That
that's the
makes sense.
difference. Yeah,
So how did you get into this? This is so interesting. Not to completely
yeah.
different subjects, but it's just really interesting. How did you get into this?
Yes. So that's why, I felt that I was chosen to do this work for this life,
Mm.
because I was working on my own voice. I
Oh.
was not assertive. I was not heard.
Mm.
So I was looking for all kinds of training. I went through all kinds of training, and including voice. So that's where I developed my own voice. And, and plus, I had some voice training before. So I was singing in schools,
Okay.
performing. And so I also did some radio in college. But all these experiences, they were only changing part of my voice. They were not changing my voice completely.
Mm.
So until I decided to work on my assertiveness, so that's where I received more voice training, and
Mm.
my voice was transformed. And but at the stage, I didn't know that this can become a career. So I
Sure.
was still
Yeah.
working for a company. I was still working for a company and doing in-house training, training our own employees.
Mm.
So one of the subjects that I taught was leadership. So a lot of people were asking me, they said, "Wow, how do we develop our voice?" So I thought, "Oh, okay, looks like that this is something that I can do."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so about 10 years ago, I quit that job and started on my own.
Yeah. That's so neat. It makes me think of, did you ever see that movie, The King's Speech?
Yes, yes,
It makes
yeah,
me think about that movie. Like, obviously his
yeah,
issue was a lisp more than it was, confidence or whatever, although the lisp affects the
yes,
confidence for sure. But it
yeah,
makes me think of that sort of a scenario where somebody has, a big thing they need to do, and they need their voice, they need help with their voice.
yes. And then there's another movie, The Iron Lady, The Iron Lady
I
by
don't think I've seen that.
Meryl Streep.
Okay.
So she was playing Margaret Thatcher, and then in that
Oh,
movie, yeah, there is a part that was talking about Margaret Thatcher was going through voice training to deepen her voice
oh,
because her pitch
interesting. I
was
did
very
not know
high.
she did
Uh,
that. Interesting.
yeah,
And look where she got to, right? And would you say that it with the
yeah,
voice
that's right.
training was a big piece of her ability to then become the leader that she was?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And also many people were also commenting politically that
Mm.
that was one of the reasons that she became more authoritative.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's so interesting.
yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, so this makes me want to ask if you could work with any one public figure from around the globe, because clearly you are around the globe with who you work with.
Yeah.
Who would you pick, and what would you want to help them do?
Uh, one of my friends, we were talking about the presidential candidates. So
For
yeah,
which country?
in the States.
Okay, yes.
So I am thinking that, well, I hope that this is not going to cause any trouble, but
It's okay if you do. I'm
I,
not going to
I,
fight with you. I
I,
stay away from politics, so you can say whatever you want, and it's all right with me.
so I was, I just bumped into some interviews, and it was Marianne Williamson.
Yes, I know
So
her.
yeah, and her voice was, I think, because she probably spoke for many hours, so that's why her voice was sounding very tired and a little
Mm,
bit sore throat.
sure.
So when I was hearing that interview, I said, "Oh, she needs to learn how to speak without ever feeling tired on her voice."
Mm.
So then there was a thought kind of flying through my mind. I said, "Oh, what if I could train her voice?"
That would be really cool. So I know
Yeah,
I'm not going to get too far into politics because this is not a political
yeah,
show, but I do have to say,
mm,
as a healer, I love her, and
mm,
I pray and hope with every part of me that she wins, because I think our country needs a healer at the helm right now. And
yeah,
so yeah, and I love that you had that insight about her voice being tired, because I'm sure
mm,
all of these candidates must talk themselves raw. you know
yeah, yeah,
it's got to be exhausting. um
yeah. That's right.
that's really fascinating. Wow, that's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool. So who have you worked with that was like your favorite? You don't have to use names, but just like your favorite type of client or whatever. And like, I mean, you can give me names if you're
Ah,
allowed to and want to, but I
so
would never ask that.
okay, sure. I was just writing a post the other day on Facebook, and in that post, I said I love my clients, every single one of them.
Okay.
So because that those people who chose to work with me, they are very driven.
Mm,
They are very they are very driven. They are very hardworking,
mm,
and so I really enjoy working with every single one of them. And also that they, yeah. So I think is I wouldn't say that there's the favorite one, but
okay.
there's a probably favorite type.
Okay. So tell me that. What's your
So
favorite type?
yeah. So the favorite type is one is really that they're very driven.
Mm,
They are hardworking, and at the same time they are very resourceful.
mm,
So resourceful in a way that in the process, when some steps, some techniques, they may seem not working, but they will be able to find a way to make it work.
mm,
Because I've told them, I said, this process, I've done it for almost 10 years and I know it works.
right.
If it didn't work for you, then you will really need to be resourceful to think about how you can make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was glad that almost all of my clients, after hearing that, they became very resourceful as well.
Mm.
So they started to think of ways to make it work, and then that's where they were able to bypass that challenge, and then
Mm.
see the results.
So can you give me an example of that? Like something that
Mm,
wasn't working and then what they did to make it work?
sure. Yes. So there was a client. She, in the process, there was one step which is about projection. So when she was working on the projection, that it was not working. And I was telling her, I said, you are too much in your head.
Mm,
Voice is body work. You need to get out of your head and get into the body.
right.
So in the beginning, she couldn't get it. And then she was getting very frustrated. And then she was telling me at least 3 times, she said, I think I'm going to give up. she said, I have tried and it didn't work. Didn't work on me. So she was already kind of getting ready to give up. And so then I was telling her, I said, the process works, but because you are too much in your head, you need to get out of the head and then think about how you're feeling in your body.
Right.
So she was slowly doing that change in herself. And then also at the same time, I was doing the exercises with her. I said, now you're going to do the exercise. Whenever it's right, I will tell you it's correct. So then you anchor that into your body. So we did many different exercises, and finally that she found one exercise that works for her. And that's where she started to be able to anchor that into her body.
Yeah.
And now, so when she speaks, she realized that in a bigger class, and when her participants got very noisy, she could still project without shouting. And also that she doesn't feel tired on her voice anymore. And then she realized, oh, now I can feel the change. That lucky I didn't give up.
And it sounds like she was a teacher or something.
She's a teacher and a therapist.
So yeah, I actually went to school to teach, and yes, being able to project and talk without your voice getting tired are pretty key for that particular profession.
Yeah. Yes.
There's many other things too, but that's definitely important. I could project. They just didn't care to listen anyway. But that's a whole other problem. But
yeah.
But that's really neat, because I'm sure her students also appreciated being able to hear what she was saying. So it was kind of a win-win. That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And I love how you were talking about anchoring that feeling into the body, because I've said many times on this show that our bodies have memories, and it's not, and so they remember like stuff from our childhood with emotions and how we respond. And you know, like I was working with a coach one time, and we were talking about something to do with my father, and there's a lot of issues with me and my dad. And I started to hunch over and curl in on myself, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was unconscious because my body remembered. And she pointed it out to me, because I didn't even realize. I was all up in my head just talking and talking, right? Like your client there, right? I was all just talking and talking about it. And she pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh, she's like, so we got to clear this from your body. And the way we did that was to get me to sit up straight, sit confident, you know, the whole night, you know, all of that, shoulders back, chest forward, blah, 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 and then talk about it. Right. And that started to clear that memory from my body. But you're using body memory the reverse way to implant new learning, which is really cool. So
yes,
it does work both ways, but very rarely do I come across someone who does it the way that you do it. So that's really neat.
Yeah. Most people, they would overlook the power of our body.
Yeah.
So voice work, I always say that voice work is a body work. So when you do that, it will affect you in many ways, especially mentally. So you feel different.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. And like I've worked with people before on confidence, and I always tell them two things. The first thing is your body, and I'll tell them, practice in front of the mirror, stand there and just you know, stand like you're confident, and then bring that out into the world with you. Even if you're not feeling with it, do it anyways, and you will see that people start to respond to you differently. And this one person that I was helping with this, she told me that she walked by a mirror and saw, and like caught just like a really quick like glance of herself in it as she was walking by in her and she didn't even realize it was her. She had to stop and go back because she was so perplexed by this confident image of herself. It was kind of neat. Wow. And and so the other thing I always tell people is about how they talk. I don't do nearly the level of voice coaching that you do. I wouldn't even know where to begin, but I do tell them to just, you know, be mindful of what they're saying and how they say it. So you're taking that to a whole new level, which is very cool. But the body is so important. It sends signals to our brain. It sends signals out into the world. It's so important. It's so important. And I love that you make that such a key piece of how you help your clients with their voice. Oh, did I lose you? I thought the internet would cooperate today, but maybe not. We'll see. Oh, and she's back. All right. Why don't we
Okay.
yeah, so we'll see what happens. Okay. She was typing to me
Okay.
even, and I
Yeah.
couldn't see that because mine was just telling me nothing. So rude. But anyway,
Yeah.
so we're back. Clearly,
Okay.
my voice was working. That's good. So I want to go.
Yes.
I want to go back to the younger me that was on the school bus and kind of just had this epiphany of I need to speak up and started singing. Like, is that something? Do you ever do
Yes.
anything where you tell people to sing or to push themselves into these really uncomfortable situations, or is it more gradual than that?
Yes, it is more gradual because the voice change itself is a very gradual process as well. So I
Yeah.
always tell them, I said, don't focus on the result, focus on the process.
Mm.
So when you focus on the result, for example, some of them, they want to have a deeper voice. When you just focus on the result, you may purposely lower your voice to sound deeper. This is the wrong process.
Well, and in doing
Wrong
that, you're going to
process
make
and
your voice really tired really quickly too.
yes, yes, yeah. So that's the wrong process and wrong result. And so instead, we focus on the process, which is, I said, you just do the exercises. In your daily voice, you don't need to do anything, and the change will happen to you. So a lot of my result-focused clients, they will say, how would the result happen to me if I don't do anything? So what I recommended them to do is to go home and plant the seed. So I asked them to buy some seeds to plant, and then they will understand it. Because when we
Right.
plant the seed, it is a process. When we focus on the process, then this plant will grow by itself.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's interesting because when I was in sixth grade, like I sort of planted my own seed in my head of like, you have to learn to talk. You can't just be silent the rest of
Yeah.
your life. You'll get nowhere. I have no idea where that came from, but it did. I say that it
Yeah.
was all spirit led
That's,
because it's the only thing that makes sense. And
yes. Yes.
and I pushed myself into that, singing on the bus thing because I'm a Scorpio, right? So I just dive in with both feet, consequences, and so, right, and so 99% of the time it works out okay, but
Yeah.
but I'm glad to hear that doesn't have to be the way for everybody, because I know not everyone is just going to go, I went from not speaking to singing on the bus overnight. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the right way for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very, very wise young child.
Yeah, it was.
You had that revelation at that young age.
I did. It was. I don't
Yeah.
know where it came from or why, but I was always, I don't know, ahead of my years or something. Like when I turned
Mhm.
15, I was sitting in my high school English classroom crying my eyes out because I was halfway to 30 and I hadn't accomplished anything. I don't know what the heck a 15-year-old is supposed to have accomplished besides going to school and getting decent grades, but I was very upset about it.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I know. And here I am a couple months away from 40 and I no longer have that stress. but but it would have been interesting to meet you back then and
Yeah.
get you to, I don't know exactly, but somehow help me find my voice and step into things like I don't know, not necessarily earlier because I think things happen when and how they're supposed to, but
Mm.
as much as I had all that insight and wisdom and bravery and whatever back then, it's taken me a long time to figure out how to use that voice, right? Like I figured out
Mm.
to use it. I figured out
Yeah.
tonality wise what to do with it, but I didn't figure out purpose wise what to do
Mm.
for a long time. And
Yeah.
so it would have been interesting to have you kind of come in with that piece of it too and get some
Yeah.
guidance there.
Yeah. So I think also it's very similar to a lot of my clients right now.
Mm,
So when they are not able to be heard, when they're not able to speak up, a lot of times it's also reflecting something that some inner challenges. For example, they may not accept themselves. So they may not, in a way, love themselves. So sometimes when we discover that, we actually work on a little bit on that piece for my clients as well.
That
to
is
accept
so
and to love
interesting.
themselves. Yeah.
Wow. And why do you think that is? That would be sort of the thing that would hold them back from using their voice?
It is a large part is because of the way that they were brought up. They were probably having a certain parent or parents that were not accepting them, might be criticizing them when they were young all the time. Then in a way that they always think that they're not good enough. So when they're not good enough, they also in a way is they're not accepting who they are.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And those childhood scars stick around without our even realizing it a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. So I can't say I had the worst parents in the world, but I also can't say I had the best parents in the world. I look at it now as they did the best that they could with the emotional resources that they had, but they didn't have very many. And so I largely just felt alone. They weren't neglectful. I mean, I had clean clothes and I had food, but I was largely just kind of on my own. Thankfully, I was always very intrinsically motivated to do the right thing and be a good kid and get good grades. I was an easy child, thankfully, but but like largely I was just kind of there. And I learned that when you speak up in my house, you caused a fight a lot of times. So I didn't want to speak up. And the only other time I ever spoke up is if I was playing peacekeeper. And that never felt good, because what child wants to, stop their parents from fighting? Like, that never felt good. And it took me a long time to learn how to use my voice for my benefit. And then after that it was only after that I could really learn how to use it for my purpose and to help make the world a better place. Like I couldn't do any of that until I learned how to speak up for myself and to say no to things, and to say, to set boundaries, and to say, I want this or I don't want this. And, and that took a long time and a lot of therapy. So I think I find that really fascinating, that's almost like a across the board thing that you've seen with your clients. That's so interesting.
Yes, that's right.
Wow. What other sorts of commonalities do you see with them?
They are, one is that I mentioned earlier, one client, which was too much in the head. Yeah. So I think that's also very, very common in so many of us, because in our society, we value the left brain, which is logic and reasoning. So we value that. And that's why that a lot of people, they were kind of put their emotional side away and or even actually don't get in touch with their emotions. Right. So that's why that the way they're speaking is monotonous, is not touching people. So that's one commonality: too much in the head, too much in the left brain. The other commonality is also because of our society. So they are focusing too much on the result. So when they focus too much on the result, then whatever they do is just doing it for the result's sake. So then actually the real result becomes temporary. The real result doesn't come across as very authentic.
Right.
So that's the two biggest commonalities I've seen.
Wow. That's really neat. So this just occurred to me, and there may be nothing to this, but it popped in my head, so I'm going to go with it and ask. So, I mean, women's voices don't really change. They sort of do during puberty, but not really. But men go through this dramatic voice change during puberty a lot of times.
Yeah.
Does that ever come into play with the work that you do, where there was some sort of trauma that happened with that and that affected their voice in adulthood?
Yes. It's just that some of my clients, they didn't realize that was the root of the problem.
Interesting.
So there was one client, he realized that he was, that was one of his trauma stages in his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you,
So then yeah.
go.
So he was, because of the voice change, so people started to laugh at him. And then he just started to shut down.
Mm.
Yeah, he was not expressing himself anymore.
I imagine that happens to a lot of boys, especially if they're among the first in their class to start having that happen.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that they would stop talking because they don't want to get laughed at.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And then also his teacher was also not supporting him. So which actually, he was still holding resentment towards his teacher. So while we were working on the voice, I said, "You're still having resentment." And it was a big revelation to him. So yeah, and
Wow.
that's where he realized, oh, even after so many years,
Yeah.
that I'm still hating that teacher.
Well, it stays in your body, like we just talked about, right? It stays in your body.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
did having that revelation make his work with you smoother after that? Was he able to kind of
Yes.
do the exercises easier?
Yes, that's right. It's much smoother.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like, this is such a revelation for me in ways. Like, logically, it all completely makes sense. And I'm right there with you on why it works and how it works. But I never thought about it before. You know, I always just had a visceral reaction to someone's voice and knew that it was potentially not even real because people's voices just sometimes rub you the wrong way. But I never really like took it to this level of thinking about that they could actually change that. Like, to me, it was just your voice is your voice, you know? And
yes.
So this is so cool. Really,
it
really
is.
cool.
So that's why I love doing my work, because it helps people and on a much deeper level.
Yeah. I never even thought about it. And with my mom, right? Like, she grew up in a home where she didn't feel like she could speak her voice. No wonder she has this issue with her voice box, right? Like,
yes.
it's just mind blown. Like, this is so cool. This is so cool.
Yes.
I can see why you love this so much, because it's very, like, it's got that sweet spot for me of logic and healing that just makes it, like, I don't know, I feel like you can get too woo-woo. Like, when you talk to people who do certain healing modalities, it can get a little too woo-woo. And I try not to have those people on my show because I don't resonate real well with them. But you're in that sweet spot of, like, the logic and the practicality and the science and some healing, and how it all connects together and makes the whole person's life better. Because yes, you're helping with their voice, but ultimately it's impacting everything.
Yes. Every area of their lives. Yeah.
Now, do you find, so we're saying that, but do you find that it actually changes, like, their, like, personal relationships too?
Yes. So for example, just now, the client I was talking about, even when he's in social settings, so he wouldn't talk to people. And sometimes he would just feel this person is too talkative, is all full of himself. And actually, there's still, at the back of his mind, there's still some, maybe he didn't realize, but unconsciously, in a way, it's relating to his past experiences. So once he was able to release that, then he wouldn't, in a way that he wouldn't be that judgmental about other people. Could be more open. And
that is really neat. And does he participate more in socialization stuff too?
Yes.
All right. So this is, again, just popped in my head. It may not make sense. And if it doesn't, just tell me. But I'm wondering, in this day and age of social media and all of that noise, because sometimes it really is noise, do you find that when people find their voice, they also post more and are more interactive on social media, or is that not connected at all?
It depends on what work they're doing.
Okay.
So if they are entrepreneurs, they started to post more. And if they are working for a company, some of my clients, for example, one of them, he works for cybersecurity. So he cannot post as he wishes.
Sure. No, that
Yeah.
makes sense. But do they post more like personal things too, though? Do they start talking just about their lives more publicly?
That one I didn't observe, but they
Okay.
started to talk about their lives more when we are in the sessions.
So potentially, because I know, like, so I know for me, like, I have a pattern with how I interact with social media. Um,
Mm,
first of all, I don't go on that often because I find it basically just a lot of noise. Um,
yeah.
but I tend to post more when I'm confident and in a good place and feel like I have good things to share. And when I'm in a
Mm,
phase of sort of self-care and resting and reevaluating, or that phase, right? Because I feel like that's a cycle, for at least in my life, that's a
yes.
cycle. And when I'm in that part of the cycle, I tend to not really post a whole lot. um
Mm,
and so I'm just wondering if that's like, I don't know, you don't have any data to back it up one way or the other, but it made me wonder, like, okay, so for people who didn't have their voice, like, do they,
mhm.
when they find their voice, do they start sharing more just across the board? That would be really interesting to find out.
Yeah. What I realize is in my classes. So sometimes when we talk about this kind of inner wound,
Yeah.
so when they started to realize it, they started to be more open and more participative in the class.
Okay. Well, and that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. But on social
Oh,
media, I suppose that there will be some people, they are probably still very concerned about safety and security. So
sure.
they may not post more.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
makes sense. Um,
Mm,
And what about things like just going out into the world and doing more stuff? I mean, I'm an introvert. I'm always and forever going to be an introvert.
mm,
Going out to a party is never going
yes.
to be a thing that I do. But when I'm when I learned how to have my voice and to be confident with who I am, I also started going out to do activities that I like more. I'm never going to be the girl that goes to the bar and does karaoke. Like, that's not me.
Mm,
But I
yeah.
am the girl that will, go paint pottery at the pottery place. Before I had my voice, I would have been the one that sat there very silently and painted the pottery. Now I'm
Yeah.
the girl that goes in and I know all the people that work there, and I talk to the other people that are painting, not like the whole time, but it's just like a quick, oh, like, I really like your project sort of thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you find that people, as they work with you, they start to go sort of do out into the world more?
Yes. So it's most of the times is how what they share with me. So
Mm,
what I realize is some of them, they started to become more, in a way, talkative in
mm,
their working environment. They started to talk to different colleagues, and
sure.
also they were clients who were telling me that they became their, even in their family, that they feel that their kids, husband or wives, their relationship was a little bit different, was much better.
Interesting. Interesting.
There's one female client. She said, "I felt that my husband started to listen to me more."
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I bet there's a
Yeah.
lot of women listening who would love to be able to say that.
Yeah. But
So,
overall, she felt happier. She felt
mm,
happier. And then her happiness was affecting her family, the
exactly.
way her family responded to her.
Yeah, and more in the confidence and all of that, it makes a huge difference in how everyone responds to you.
Yes, yes.
That's so interesting. I had a question and it left my head, so I'm sorry. I'm seeing if it will come back, and if
Yeah.
it doesn't, that's okay.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it's gone. Oh well. Um, so, um, like, so how do these people, like, if they were to say to you, like, what the biggest thing that changed for them, what do you think it would be?
Mm. The biggest thing is the way they feel about themselves.
Mm.
So one is the voice. They can, voice is something not only that we hear, but also we feel because it's physical. So
Right.
they feel the voice in their body is different.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's really the confidence. The confidence in the beginning, because the change is gradual. So in the beginning, they may not notice, but they started to notice the response from people became different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they started to realize, oh, there's some change.
Mm. That's really interesting. Now, I don't know if you do this with your clients or not, but I know for me, so like your voice sounds different in your head than it does like if you listen to it on tape or something, right? We all know this. We
Yes.
all figured this out when we were like 5 years old, right? But
Yeah.
I know that 10 or 20 years ago, listening to the sound of my voice on a tape or something really bugged me. I didn't like the way it sounded. It didn't sound like me. It was wrong. It was weird. I didn't like it. But with this podcast, I have to listen to my voice all the time because I go back and re-listen to these before I post them. I have to do a little bit of editing. I pull out quotes to put on the graphics and all this stuff, right?
Mm.
And the very first time I sat down to re-listen to a podcast and do all that, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I want to hear my voice. And something in those intervening years must have changed within me because I turned it on and I heard myself say, welcome everyone to the Healing Corner. And it didn't bug me. I was very like, I'm like, oh, I have a very nice voice. That sounds great. And so something within me must have changed, obviously, like my confidence or something must have changed. And I'm wondering if any of your clients have similar stories like that.
Yes. So it happens in quite a lot of my clients. So when we work on the voice, we work on a fuller voice. There's more in the body. And first of all is they feel better when they are listening to their own voices. So some of my clients said, I like this voice. And there are also clients said, I just feel better. I don't know why. And many of them, they started to record their own voices and then listen back. They say, oh, I don't hate my voice anymore. I like my voice.
See?
And that happened a lot. And some of them, because they like their own voices, there was one client, she was showing her recording to all her friends. There were also clients, they started to do podcasts because they like their own voices now.
Yeah, it's so like it was very weird I just started I've started the podcast. That was a spirit-led thing too. I was basically told, like, people externally had been saying to me, you should start a podcast. And I was like, no, I don't even know what I would talk about or how to do a technical side of it. No, I'm not doing it. It was wicked resistant. And then one day I was knitting and spirit came in, because your guard kind of goes down when you're doing something like that, right? And said, you're going to start a podcast. And I was like, no. And I'm like, no, Sarah, this is spirit. You need to listen. And I was like, okay, so what would it be called? And I was literally given the whole title, the concept, all of it. And all I had to do was Google around to figure out the technical aspects. And thankfully, I'm a pretty quick study. So I was like, okay. And I didn't even think about the voice part of it because I'm confident enough talking one-on-one with somebody and having a conversation that I didn't even think about it until I sat down to re-listen to it. And then it was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. So it was a very pleasant surprise for me that my voice didn't upset me to listen to in that way. It was really neat. And I love that that's kind of a common thing.
Yeah, I think probably also in the process that you're accepting this idea more, and you are also becoming more relaxed. So that's why the voice will reflect that.
Right. Yeah, that's so neat. Yeah. I never really thought about it. I just thought, well, I guess I grew up, right? Because I hadn't heard my own voice on recording for a long time, right? And so I just figured, well, I'm an adult now, and so things change. Just like, I didn't used to like particular foods, and now I do, or whatever. But I never really thought about it that way before. That's so neat. So do you have any other words of wisdom you would like to share with us?
I think, a lot of people were asking me, they said, oh, do I have to work on my voice? I think voice is also a channel for self-enhancement. So it's more about personal transformation. So voice is another channel, another avenue for people to transform themselves. So I think if people want to explore different areas of themselves, they can really consider working on their voices. So even if I'm not a voice coach, but because I benefited on working on my own voice, so I would still recommend people to consider it as a channel of transforming themselves.
Yeah. I love that, because it is, as we've been talking about, it's everything. It does impact all of your emotions and your body and all of that. I think that's such a unique approach. I mean, most people, they'll hire a therapist or a life coach or whatever, and those are all valid and great. But I think that this is such a really cool avenue to think about. You know, it obviously depends on, you know, where you're at and what you're trying to do, but I think that's such a cool avenue to think about. I had never put it that way before. So that's really neat. That's really neat.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Well, thank you again for spending some time with me and being on the show.
Sure.
Once again, you have all been listening to The Healing Corner. If you liked the show, please consider becoming a part of my community on Patreon. This is Sarah Woodard reminding you to take charge of your healing and own your story.